This year's Patriot Award Recognition Banquet is the 14th annual event, and we thank you for attending and are honored by your presence.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Eternal and ever faithful God, we are aware that there are few places in your creation where people can publicly pray to you or not, but with respect for one another. We who have worn the uniforms of this nation and others who have dedicated themselves to supporting our armed forces give thanks for all who have served and fought to procure that right. This night we gather to pay honor and to give thanks for two very special people who have contributed greatly to our military families and to the communities of these islands. In your name we pray. Amen.
The commander of the Indo-Asia Pacific Command, Admiral Harry Harris.
Hearing the words, the land of the free and the home of the brave, means something special for every American, every day. But it's especially important tonight as we celebrate patriotism. So tonight we honor General Bramlett and Ms. Sabas as true American patriots for their selfless service to nation and community.
Good evening. It's great to be here this evening, and I have the amazing privilege to introduce one of my bosses, one of my mentors, one of my great friends. As a young girl, she joined Senator Inouye and did not leave him after she finished teaching at American University as a law professor. And she was always by his side. He was on the phone with her constantly. And so she's a friend of sailors and soldiers and airmen and Marines and Coast Guardsmen and all of our wonderful civilians that support those organizations. She is one of the few people who will stand up here and say, go Navy, and go Army, and go Air Force, and go Marines, and go Coasties. Ladies and gentlemen, my high honor to introduce an amazing patriot, Ms. Jennifer Goto Sabas.
I'm Vice Admiral Dixon Smith, Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Fleet Readiness and Logistics. And it's an absolute pleasure to be with you all tonight to recognize Jen Sabas as the American Patriot for the Navy League this year.
I'm Irene Hirano Inouye, and I've known Jennifer Sabas through first her role as the Chief of Staff for my late husband, Senator Daniel Inouye. She led the Hawaii office and the work that Dan did here throughout the state of Hawaii and coordinated closely with the staff that was in Washington, D.C.
She's a collaborator, she's a connector, and she puts people together looking for win-win solutions. She would work with you and think through the process on how to achieve your objective at the same time achieving other people's objectives.
My name is Steven Sasaki. I've known Jen Sabas from her days at Senator Inouye's office as she was a Chief of Staff. Jen is the president of the company Kaimanahila. Kaimanahila means Diamond Head, and all the areas around Diamond Head, the Alawai, Kapiolani Park, Waikiki, and its hotels, and they all look up, see the elegant Diamond Head. Ikekai Ikanani Kaimanahila. Jen, you represent Diamond Head for the people of Hawaii, and the people of the United States of America.
Following Dan's passing, she had agreed to become the executive director of the Daniel K. Inouye Institute. And the military was always an important part of Dan's work. And it's wonderful that Jennifer has been able to continue that work through work that she's doing with the Military Affairs Council. She was really the backbone of Dan's office and really made things happen.
And that's how she did it, and that's what she still does to this day, and has done great things nationally with Senator Inouye, continues to do great things to this day here for the state of Hawaii.
My memory of Jen is when she gave the eulogy at Senator Inouye's funeral with her grace and dignity in front of a national audience and in front of President Obama. But the story that we all laugh about was when her son decided to bring a fishing spear into the punch bowl with heavy security on that most important day of her career.
So I'm extremely proud to call her a friend. I want to congratulate Jennifer on receiving the Navy League's American Patriot Award. I cannot think of a more deserving person for your work as a partner with Dan, and the work that you have continued to do to support the military here in Hawaii and throughout our country.
Thank you for your patriotism and congratulations on your award.
So Jen, on your night tonight, I couldn't think of someone more deserving to be the Navy League's American Patriot for 2017. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for your stewardship of Hawaii. Thank you for taking care of our Ohana. God bless you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
You know, there's one word to describe what I'm feeling right now, and that's gratitude. I am grateful for many, many things. I'm grateful for a wonderful family. My husband is here this evening. One of our 3 sons is here. He is the son that took his Christmas present, the spear gun, to Punch Bowl for the Senator's memorial service. My brother-in-law from Molokai is also here, and so I'm very grateful to have an amazing supportive family. I am also grateful to have had the opportunity to work for one of the most amazing leaders that Hawaii will ever know, in Dan Inouye. Thank you. It was a continuous learning lesson on leadership. Steady values, focused on the good of the people, making investments that were important for the people of this state and this nation to keep us strong, resilient, and prosperous. So shortly after I became his chief of staff, I moved home from Washington, D.C. and became his chief of staff in Hawaii. He said to me, and I could never do the voice thing, but he said, if you want to represent me in Hawaii, you will need to learn about the military and the important role that they play, not only because of our economy, but to our community and to our nation and state security. And so you also need to know that prior to that time, I had very little interaction. As Walt said, I grew up in Kaneohe. I loved the days at the Kaneohe Marine Base, but that was about it. And thus began my education. I am grateful to have learned from superstars like Tom Fargo, Mike Vitale, and as you saw, Dixon Smith. And I fast realized that our nation's flag officers were way more than badass warfighters. They were pretty impressive CEOs and amazingly skilled diplomats. And you know, one of our big tests came in 2005 when the Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard was placed on the blacklist. And after the shock and horror wore off, our leaders, state, county, federal, and community, pulled together. We did everything that we could do, and I do have to do a shout out to our friend Riz, who was an amazing supporter, albeit, although he had to be neutral, he was an amazing supporter, and it was wonderful to have him in our court. And together, this community pulled together and took the shipyard off the blacklist. But then, the real work and the scoldings began. I still remember helping to set up an all-hands meeting at the shipyard. The lawn was packed, and I don't know if Stephen and Nate remember, but you could hear a pin drop. And as I have always said, once you get scoldings from Danny Noe, everything else is gravy. He scolded, he chided them, and he asked them to work harder, work faster, and work smarter. But at the same time, he committed to be a better advocate and champion on their behalf. And in the years that followed, with the home porting of the Virginia-class submarines, he could not have been prouder of his Noko'oi shipyard. You know, there are so many other stories to share and invaluable lessons on leadership. The Pacific Missile Range, which was also on the BRAC list, that Admiral Harris today talks about as a national treasure and of increasing importance with the continued actions and impulsive actions of North Korea. Or bringing the USS Missouri home, or as our good friend Norm Dix from Washington State would say, stealing it out of Puget Sound. I am also grateful to have learned from the best and to have had a hand in shaping so many of the investments and initiatives in Hawaii. And so with his passing, I committed myself to continue his legacy. And together with his widow Irene, as you heard, we established the Daniel K. Inouye Institute. I am grateful to continuing my service with the Military Affairs Council and realized that it was going to take a much broader village. Labor unions, legislators, neighbor island representatives, and other sectors of business to continue to support our military and to advocate for its presence here. I'm grateful to work with our chair, Dave Carey, who is here. Thank you, Dave, for your support. Thank you. And to mentor the Vice President of the Military Affairs Council, Kamakana Kaimuloa, as he has turned into a pretty amazing leader himself. You know, a few weeks ago, I was at JVEF, the Joint Venture Education Forum, to help present an award to an outstanding military volunteer. Many years ago, the senator established JVEF because of his concern about the growing rift between civilian and military leaders with regard to the education of military children. He felt very strongly that all Hawaii's children needed to be educated together, because once divided, that division would lead to other divisions, and then at some point, our community could not come together as one. And I need to tell you that there was a time that that was not a very popular idea. So to sweeten the deal, he provided a little bit of dirty money. He provided an earmark. And I don't know about you, but I kind of miss those earmark days. But you know, when the earmark went away, he was convinced that JVEF would go away. And so it warmed my heart to see the organization thriving, celebrating excellence and student achievement, because you know, it was no longer about the money. And you could feel the spirit of Danny Noe and Mark Takai fully embracing all those in the room that day. Let me close with one final story, and I hope you don't think it too morbid, and it is personal, because it forever etched in me the depth of the senator's affection for the military, which he credited for making him the man and the leader he became. So this is December of 2012. I was in DC with the senator and Irene, and the senator's health was quickly failing. He was taken by ambulance to George Washington University Hospital. He was requiring more and more oxygen as the fibroids were taking over his lungs. But as soon as he was stable, he asked to be moved to Walter Reed. He asked to be moved home. And once at Walter Reed, he required a full oxygen mask, so he was no longer able to speak, but he could write. And so till the very end, he was bossing us around and giving us tasks that we complied with very sadly, actually. And once we were done, and the end was near, he asked us to have his President Pro Tem coins brought to the hospital. And then he asked for all the medical staff that cared for him so kindly to come into his room. He gave each a coin, saluted them all, penned aloha, and left us for the other side of the rainbow. I thank you all so very much. I am so humbled and grateful. Aloha and Godspeed.
I'm Colonel Jim Lackey, as I was introduced, and I have the honor of introducing General David Bramlett as this year's military recipient of the American Patriot Award. Whether leading a small nonprofit organization here in Hawaii or commanding the 750,000 soldiers of U.S. Forces Command, every organization he has been associated with has been more successful because of his total commitment to the mission and the role model and mentoring that he has provided. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my role model, my mentor, and a great friend, General David Bramlett.
I'm Charlie Salmon. I'm a retired Foreign Service officer. I worked closely with General Bramlett when he came to the U.S. Pacific Command in the 90s to be the deputy commander. I think he exemplifies the motto of his alma mater, duty, honor, country.
It's really an honor for me to join the Navy League of Honolulu in recognizing Dave Bramlett with the American Patriot Award. I wish Jill and I were there to join Dave and Nora in this splendid night.
Thanks very much for allowing me to be a part of this recognition of General Dave Bramlett. I've known General Bramlett since I was a cadet at West Point over 4 decades ago. He's a tremendous leader and has been an influence in my life, both as a professional soldier and in my life after the military in very significant ways.
He's a terrific leader. He was a natural diplomat, I thought, and I had the opportunity to accompany him on several diplomatic missions to the South Pacific. I thought as a diplomat I was very envious of his diplomatic skills because he advanced our country's interests considerably during his negotiations with some of the leaders of these islands.
He's the leader we all want to be. In circumstances when it was very, very rough, when things were great, it didn't matter. General Bramlett was always there. He brought us into the solutions. He was an inclusive leader.
Now, I know a lot of you in the Navy League probably are endorsing him because he was raised in a Navy family. But I'm proud to tell you, look, I've known Dave since 1960 when we were cadets at West Point. I watched him over the years. Of course, he, as all of you know, he attained the rank of 4-star general. He has a brilliant combat record as an organizer. But to most of us who have known over the years, who think he is simply the best of us, it's his sense of honor and integrity.
General Bramlett is a warrior. He's a scholar warrior. He is schooled in the principles of warfare, but he mostly brings to that a sense of study. He reached out to me when I was getting ready to go to combat in Iraq back in 2003. He was my digital pen pal. As a matter of routine, he and I were chatting on email about life, about family, about unit readiness, and simply the fact of whether our soldiers were ready. He was there for me. He was there for our team.
I also had the opportunity to teach with General Bramlett. We were both adjunct faculty members for Hawaii Pacific University. I've also had the good fortune to serve on the Hawaii Army Museum's Board of Governors. General Bramlett, of course, succeeded General Herb Wolf as head of that organization, and it's remarkable how much he's accomplished in his tenure as the president.
And we're proud to see that he's continued this lifetime of service, not just to the armed forces as a retiree, but also to the people of Honolulu. Have a great night, Dave and Nora Bramlett.
Thank you for letting me say these few words, and I hope everybody will have a terrific evening honoring this great soldier and statesman.
So let me tell you again how honored I am to be a part of this recognition. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for General Bramlett. He was there for me to reach out to. I am blessed to have had that relationship with General Bramlett, and I'm blessed to continue to call him a friend and a mentor. Thank you very much, and sir, you are the very best. Thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you, Jim. The greatest artilleryman that I know, and as an infantryman, I can tell you, the friend on the battlefield we won is the artillery. And Jim was absolutely the best artilleryman in my career that I ever encountered. It's my good fortune that he consented to introduce me to you all. This is a humbling experience. Jennifer said it best. It makes us humble, the two of us, and certainly it's my turn to be humble. When you look at a list, the past Patriot Award winners, a list that begins with Admiral Joe Vasey, the very epitome of patriotism, of distinguished service, of dedicated service, both in uniform and after, you have to be humbled. And then you look at the other folks and the variety of ways in which they have served. Admiral Harris pointed out very eloquently the different ways that patriots serve their country, their community. But you look at a Jerry Coffey or Jim Hickerson, a Mildred Courtney, Ron Hayes and Lane Oda, Bob Kihuni, Larry Sayu, and last year Bob Lee, Shelley Wilson, in my cohort, or my colleague this time, Jennifer Sabas. That range of ability to serve this community and by extension our country, and some of the achievements that Jennifer has done have been well chronicled. This is very special for me personally. Barry McCaffrey touched on it, and some of you know I was indeed raised in a Navy family. And as I stand here, it's very emotional for me because I know my dad, if he were here, he'd say, now we're talking something important. I was raised by the Blue Jackets Manual. I mean, I learned customs and courtesies in the Navy. I learned the Morse code. I'm that old. Da, da, dit. Some of the older sailors know that. Semaphore, I learned. I learned how to shine shoes. I grew up with the Blue Jackets Manual. It prepared me, actually, for West Point. My dad was 20 years before the mast. He was a petty officer, first class. He was a parachute rigger. Served in World War II. Air Group 9 embarked the USS Essex, the Enterprise, the Lexington, and his favorite ship, the Yorktown, the Fighting Lady. Now, you begin to understand where I learned my patriotism. He loved the Navy. Regardless, my mom and dad loved the Navy. And growing up in that family, the Navy wasn't always kind to my dad. He retired after 20 years of service as a petty officer first class. My dad, like many of the sailors of that era, was a GED high school graduate, and he had a difficult time passing tests. And that chief's hard hat was never able to become something he could achieve. But it never diminished and dimmed his love of the Navy. And it took care of him. The 32nd Street Commissary and Exchange, they knew well, I knew well. Balboa Naval Hospital took care of him, and they buried him at sea. In fact, incredibly, the Navy, I don't know how they did this, but my mom and dad were buried by the same ship 4 years apart. When you grow up in that family, like I did, you understand patriotism. They taught me love of country. Service is serving, certainly for sure while in the service, but also when you finish, volunteer, look for some way to pay back. When it was time to come to Hawaii, and we were very fortunate, we came to Hawaii to serve this community. My travels and my late wife's travels never gave us a chance to be a member of a community. We just moved that frequently. We chose to do most of our efforts in volunteer work on the North Shore and here. And Jim did a good example to touch on some of the things we did. We found ourselves naturally gravitating to support those organizations that serve those who serve. And was somewhere mentioned USO, Armed Services Y, HAMS, and of course the MAC, among others. What made it so easy was when I came here, I realized, looking around the community, and I saw so many of you who have full-time jobs. David Carey, of the things he does, and the list goes on and on. But you found time to volunteer and give back to the community. That's inspiration. That was tremendously helpful for me, and I know for those of you look around, it's very inspirational and helpful for you as well. And of course, MAC, I'm very honored to be a part of MAC for many, many, many years, and it's very satisfying for me to be here with Jennifer, both of us members of the MAC. Jennifer, a much more driving force, and I just sort of hang on and do what I can. But the MAC does wonderful things for the military, and so many of you belong to that organization just like you belong to the Navy League, because you find the time to do the things to help these organizations that help the men and women who serve. One last anecdote, if I could, about my father, because obviously he comes to my mind a lot this evening. And this involves my dad, Admiral Mackey, a name you might know, Admiral Chester Nimitz, and me. In 1995, my father, just before he passed away, was able to travel to Hawaii. And as Jim touched on, I was the deputy commander of Pacific Command. And it was the old headquarters. And my dad, I had a hard time explaining to my dad that I was doing okay in the Army. It was very difficult. When I, and it's a quick footnote, it will be illuminated in this anecdote. When I became a brigade commander, which is a good job, I became a brigade commander in the 82nd Airborne, America's Strategic Corps, and I was the commander of the 1st Brigade. I called my father all excited, "Dad, I'm the commander, 1st Brigade, 82nd. My dad said, "Oh, that's good, Mouse." This is my nickname. I wanted more enthusiasm. And so I thought, my dad, a carrier sailor, I said, aha. I said, "Dad, it would be like I am commanding a carrier, an aircraft carrier." My father could not comprehend his son commanding an aircraft carrier. So it fell on deaf ears. Years later, 1995, he comes back, and I'm going to take him up to Pacific Command headquarters. Admiral Mackey, the commander, the SINC, had given permission for me to visit the bridge. He said, "Yeah, bring your dad up to the bridge." My father had never been to any bridge anywhere. So I took him up, I showed him my spaces, which were in the old headquarters, was just down the hall. And he went in and he looked and saw that the executive assistant and others were there. And I said, "Dad, let's go down to Admiral Mackey's bridge." So we go down the hall, and as we go down the hall in the old headquarters, there were the pictures of all the past Pacific Command commanders. And it begins with Chester Nimitz. So as we went down, there were these stately faces, and we get to the end, and I stopped and I said, "Dad, there's Admiral Nimitz." And my father looked up there, and as if he looked at God. And he looked at Nimitz, and my father Nimitz did not hang around, but he knew the name from the World War II. And he looked at Nimitz, and he looked down the hall to where my office was. He looked back at the picture, looked back down the hall. Then he knew I had arrived. It was a very special moment in my life. Well, you can imagine how proud he would be that I am here to accept this award. It's been an honor to be here with you. My wife Nora was very excited when Admiral Mackey called and told me, until I informed her that no, it just means I'm getting old. But nonetheless, I'm very, very grateful. Regardless of the criteria that you used, I am very, very thankful that you've selected me. I'm pleased to share these honors with Jennifer tonight. And as I leave, I am reminded that I do have the last word. beat Navy.
I really want to thank everyone for coming tonight. It's a great turnout to honor two great Americans, American patriots. I know them both very well. I trained Bramlett. No, not true, not true. And Jennifer trained me. Where are you? I don't want to detract from our honorees tonight, but there is somebody else I want to recognize. How many of you are aware of the story of the USS Indianapolis? Many. 1,196 crew, 317 survived. We are very fortunate to have one of them as a citizen, a homemaker, a friend here in Oahu. Ensign John Woolston, would you please stand and be recognized?
I've had the great pleasure of knowing our two awardees tonight, both the General and Jennifer, who give tirelessly of their capability, their intellect. I mean, the MAC would not be the same today without General Brownland or Jennifer. So thank you on behalf of their worthy awardees. Thank you all for sponsoring tonight.
None of this would be possible without you being here tonight and being a part of our annual fundraisers. Thank you very much for all you're doing for our sea services.
To everybody who came, and I mean this very sincerely, thank you very much for all of your support. The Navy League needs it. The Navy needs it. Our military needs it. Thank you, Jennifer. Our nation needs it. We need Americans to be Americans. Thank you, and good night.